One of the most common questions I get asked is how much removal should you play? And almost always the answer is it depends. How many tutors do you have? How much card draw do you play? Do you have removal in the command zone? Your theme can also impact how much removal you are playing. If you are a goad deck, you might not want board wipes all the time because you won't have any goad targets left over. In this video though, I want to talk about one specific angle to help you determine how much removal you should be playing in your casual commander deck. And that is the relationship between your win condition and removal package. But first, if you want to upgrade your removal or win cons, consider buying cards from Cool Stuff Inc. If you use my code TTM, it gets you a discount, this token, and supports the channel. Thanks to Cool Stuff Inc. for sponsoring. Okay, let me explain the graph. This is the amount of removal in your deck increasing, and then the downward curve is the speed and power of your win conditions decreasing. Super fast, I need to define an inverse relationship. I mean something like supply and demand. When the supply goes up, demand goes down. And then the opposite is true. As supply goes down, demand increases. I also want to clarify that I am talking about removal here, not your complete interaction package. Defensive cards that protect your game plan are different, and I'll talk more about it later. Side tangent, sometimes people think I take too long to get to the point of the video, but I do these definitions to make sure people are on the same page. Otherwise, I get dozens of comments of people thinking an inverse relationship means dozens of different things. By just mentioning card advantage, which seems simple, I will get tons of players arguing random things count as card advantage. This is why I have these definitions at the start before the main portion of the video. Anyway, now I want to talk about your clock. And I'm not talking about this drip. I mean how fast your win condition closes out the game. Sometimes this is rather obvious. With a combo, your clock is 1 turn. When you cast the last combo piece, you win. If you play a 10-10, then that can close out a game in 12 turns, 4 hits to each player. If you play a 1-1 as your finisher, then your clock is 120 turns. Of course, these numbers are a bit fuzzy, since your opponents will also be dealing damage to each other. This means that your clock is usually a little bit faster if you're dealing damage. Archetypes like combo, mill, infect, and a few other things will have much more certain speeds at which they win, since you are likely the only player trying to put poison counters on someone else, for example. The second part of your win condition is the speed at which you assemble that threat. Although a combo is a 1-turn clock, which makes it pretty fast, if it involves 5 pieces and you have no tutors, then assembling it might take quite a few turns, so the total speed of your deck is actually still quite low. Or if you are a token deck, the speed and consistency at which you assemble a wide board and find the overrun effect will also factor into the total speed of your win condition. Even though, again, the clock is actually quite fast, your deck's speed still could be rather slow. Using this idea of the speed and power of your win condition, we can try to extrapolate how much removal you need. If it takes you 7 turns on average to develop your board and hand and set up for the win, then it takes, let's say, 1 more turn on average to find your actual win condition, and then that win condition has a 1-turn clock. Your total speed is 9 turns. And if you expect one player to attempt a win before you, then you probably need at least 1 piece of removal to disrupt them so you can win after they attempt to win. To find this, we can go to Salubrious Snail's calculator, link below, bust out the hypergeometric calculator, and for example, if we have 10 pieces of removal and want one by turn 6 to stop the fastest deck at the table from winning, then we have a 77% chance of getting 1 piece of removal. This theoretical set of numbers I just made up for that example does have a few flaws. Unless you are in a regular playgroup against the same decks, you might not know what the average turn a player wants to win actually is, although brackets can help with that. Additionally, it is possible you get hit with removal, which might necessitate a protection spell, and that can also slow down your win in many different ways. There are a lot of variables. so getting a solid number is fairly difficult, which is why I usually recommend more removal over less, because on average, you're probably just gonna be a little bit slower than you expect because you're being interacted with, and some people might have something you didn't see coming, and you might need removal one turn earlier than you expect. Additionally, there are a few alternatives to playing a lot of removal. You can utilize removal engines and have an infinite amount of removal. Recently, I put Vidalcan Shackles and Helm of Possession in one of my decks. This lets you yoink one creature with the shackles, sack it to the helm, to then yoink another creature, and you can do that at instant speed and then block with that other creature, which lets you just constantly clear the board. And since I am playing this in a slow control deck where the win cons are few and far between, I need a lot of removal. The clock is slow, so removal needed is high. Alternatively, if you don't want to play a removal engine, you can play card draw engines, and then by drawing a large amount of cards, you can find a lot of removal over the course of the game, even if you don't have a huge amount of removal in your deck overall. So that would be this part of the graph, where the win cons are really slow and weak, so the removal is very high. But what about the other end? If your clock is fast and your win con is powerful, then your removal should be low. I see this all the time with commander decks, because I see a lot of commander decks via my deck reviews on Patreon, link below. As much as I personally love playing control decks full of removal, if you are an aggro list, you shouldn't be playing that much. Every piece of removal you draw is a threat you didn't draw. In an aggro list, if you plan to be the fastest deck at the table, you don't need removal until late game, usually when there's only one player left, or if things have gone wrong and you've fallen behind. Actually, this goes well with an idea I talked about on the podcast episode with Beevuu, the idea of playing only board wipes and no spot removal. It's actually not a horrible idea in an aggro deck, since you will probably only need removal when you are already behind. With just 5 board wipes, you have a 56% chance of finding one on turn 8, not including any extra card draw. Not that this is a deck building idea I personally subscribe to, but it is interesting to test out. Wait, subscribe? Like subscribing to a monthly box or magazine in the mailbox, which is rectangular like a button like the subscribe button, which you should click. Another factor messing with our number of removal pieces is card draw and tutors. But we can account for this by counting tutors as additional pieces of removal, maybe with a mana tax. Just another reason tutors can be fun, since you can lower the amount of removal needed in your deck, and then during the game, if you draw the tutor and don't need removal, you can just tutor up the most fun card in your list. With a heavy amount of card draw, let's say you're consistently drawing an extra card because of your commander, you can use that in the hypergeometric calculator. Bump the number of turns up by 1, and it'll automatically factor in effectively 1 extra piece of card draw. And then you can get a more accurate percentage of how likely it is to draw removal by whatever turn. This is the gist of the relationship between removal and the speed of your deck. As your win cons slow down, get weaker, you need more removal to compensate. I think utilizing this idea can be really useful. Most people, though, are not playing an all-in aggro or turbo combo list, nor are most players playing draw go control or hard stacks. So if you're playing something in the middle, like a mid-range deck, how do you use this theorem? Well, here are some tools to determine what side of the graph you lean towards. You can simply enter your mind palace and think about some recent games with the deck. If you have aphantasia, enter your void and just think about the previous games. Were other players attempting to close out the game before or after you? If you find other players are going for wins before your deck, then you are probably on the slower end and likely just need more removal. If you are going for the win first, then you might actually want less removal. Additionally, when I say go for the win, it doesn't need to be a big finisher or combo. It can be the turn at which players stop developing their board or hands and begin to pressure life totals. From there, you can start to estimate what their clock is and how long it'll take for them to win. Compare that to what stage your deck is in. Are you still developing your board, or have you also turned the corner and have begun putting pressure on your opponent's life totals? I do want to clarify, this is less removal, not interaction. Protection spells, defensive counter spells, and redirection spells are all still quite good, especially if you're trying to win early. Additionally, defensive interaction should correlate with how fast your deck is. A Pact of Negation isn't super fun to pay for when you are protecting a medium level threat. But if your threat is super high impact and wins in one go, then a Pact of Negation is much more powerful. And there isn't a next turn, so you don't have to pay the mana. So that is the inverse removal theorem. The amount of removal your deck needs scales inversely to the speed and power of your win cons. I think this is one tool that can help you find out if you're playing too much or too little removal in your deck. I know that there are a lot of additional caveats that I tried to go over in this video which do complicate things, but if you generally stick to this idea, I do think your decks will be better tuned. Patron user Baharat asks, who is your favorite sumo? How long have you been a fan of the sport? And how did you discover it? So if you don't know what they're talking about, they're referencing that on my second channel, I made a whole video about sumo wrestling, which you should go check out and watch the current tournament. It's super fun. I've been following sumo for, I want to say loosely 2 years, but I really didn't get into it until last year. I think Horshoryu is my favorite sumo wrestler. I think it's super fun that he is functionally a lightweight in the sport. I mean, he's not that light, but he's definitely not one of the heavier guys. I think his matches are super fun to watch, really technical stuff. All the heel hooks and like leg sweeps are super fun. I think that kind of Mongolian style of sumo is really exciting to watch. Although I know he wins a lot, so maybe it's kind of cringe to say that, I like watching him, but it's fun to watch him win. He's really good. I also really think it's funny that since, I don't know, high school or whatever, whenever anybody asked him what his goals are in sumo, he just says the apex and then refuses to elaborate, which is incredibly funny. Like, it's just so funny he's been doing that since forever. How did I discover sumo? Really, I just heard Jay Schlatt talking about it. And he seemed really excited about it in just random videos and things. And from there, I was like, oh, I'll Google some sumo. Might as well. I've been a Chuckle Sandwich fan for like a long time, so, it really started from there. Thanks for your question. And special thanks to all my other patrons, especially my tier 3 patrons whose names you see scrolling by here. If you want to ask questions like that, get in the credits, or get access to the bonus videos, other perks, you should click the link below.